Hola,
Hola Manuel.
¿qué tal Ana? ¿Cómo
Muy
andás?
bien.
Me alegro. Muy bien. Hoy vamos a ver tenemos el último archivo Redux, el número 16, ¿no? Del año,
Sí,
de una conferencia de Boštjan Vuga del 22 de noviembre de 2019, o sea, hace casi exactamente un año,
sí.
eh, que se llama Porosidades. Este,
Sí,
sí,
bueno,
no,
es un tema relativamente contemporáneo. Boštjan lleva un año preocupado con el tema de describir la porosidad. Es su unit en la AA se ha llamado así estos 2 años, así que también tiene esa correspondencia. Eh,
mm. Sí, claro, no, pensaba que hay una pregunta y creo que vos estabas dando un poco la respuesta que tiene que ver con el ciclo en general, en un sentido un poco abstracto, pero tiene que ver, que es, ¿por qué una práctica como la de Sadar Vuga, que es la práctica que tiene Boštjan hace, hace varios años, por qué se tiene la necesidad eh, o el ímpetu, el impulso de conceptualizarse, ¿no? O sea, ¿cuál es el interés que hay detrás de eso? Me parece que no es tan obvia la respuesta, digamos. Porque después, digamos, la conferencia Porosidades, y mismo por eso decía parte de la respuesta, lo que vos decís, hay una investigación que un poco es a posteriori, me parece, por eso lo de la práctica, pero sí que están pareciera o Boštjan está intentando pensar lo que está haciendo, ¿no?
Sí, sí. Me parece que hay como una voluntad de teoría de la práctica no explicitada, sino más bien ejercida. O sea, es como una especie de práctica de la práctica. Creo que eso es algo interesante porque visto, digamos, desde la hora sin contextualizarlo demasiado, porque no hay tantas de estas prácticas en marcha. O sea, creo que es como una traza de los 90, que es cuando él, digamos, estudia y se desarrolla, y si entiendo, si tengo bien las fechas, creo que es más al final de los 90 que hacen sus primeros edificios públicos más grandes en Ljubljana, y creo que está impregnado de ese momento en el cual la arquitectura, practicar la arquitectura consistía también en conceptualizarla todo el tiempo para poder transmitirla, ¿no? Y esa doble voluntad de construir, pero también de que esa construcción sea como un medio para cierta discusión. eh, y, digamos, y exponerlo de esa manera, dejar que los edificios que se construyen se friccionen con esos discursos, está buena, ¿no? O sea, yo pensaba como en eso de que Boštjan, cuando estaba en la EA estudiando como alumno, estuvo con Kipnis, cuando Kipnis era el director del diario justo antes de Brett, ¿no? Y pensaba en la figura de Kipnis siendo, bueno, muy ruthless en el análisis de la arquitectura. Y hay un libro que sacan ellos, el primero que sacan, donde hay todo un ensayo de Kipnis sobre su obra, ¿no? Y pensaba, claro, si tú no tienes miedo a exponerte a estas opiniones, entonces solo puedes como crecer en el sentido de seguir discutiendo mediante los edificios que haces. Y por ahí a eso me refiero con la práctica de la práctica. Es como practicar la práctica como una cosa que implica cierta discusión y que se puede discutir sobre esos edificios, ¿no? O sea, como que te los pone ahí delante, digamos, sin... No sé, esa sería una manera, no es una respuesta a tu digamos, concern sobre la conceptualización. Creo que es como una modalidad de conceptualización, ¿no? Que no es la única tampoco.
Que decías como práctica de la práctica, que como que practica la práctica en vez de
como que es consciente de eso, creo. Es consciente de que en el ejercer la práctica en edilicia hay una capa que es cómo se percibe, cómo se recibe. Como si, ¿sabes? Antes me decías eso del club, ¿no? Como si la arquitectura fuera un gran club de gente que habla sobre lo que el otro hace, como si fuera casi de una época como más clásica, ¿no?
Claro, más controlada en sus medios, ¿no? Como
Sí,
menos dispersa.
sí.
Eh, pues, es interesante como de... no, lo pensaba como más abstractamente, como si uno, hay ciertas prácticas, y esta sería una de ellas, que practican con un club imaginario, ¿no? Como con un club virtual, literal, sería literalmente virtual, como un club virtual con el cual dialogan.
Sí.
Eh, pero no me parece que sea un diálogo paranoico, digamos, como un diálogo, en esta en particular, ¿eh? O sea, en esta, la práctica de Boštjan, o lo que vamos a ver hoy en particular, como un diálogo paranoico calculador, del tipo, si hago es como el cálculo en el sentido de ajedrecístico, de si hago este movimiento, entonces me parece que es más de club, casi que uno podría decir que los edificios, y ahora me daría ganas de ver los edificios pensando en eso, eh, como si hay ciertas cosas que están hechas para que le gusten a otros, pero en el buen
Sí.
sentido, como de esto le va a gustar
Sí.
mucho a tal,
Total.
de ese club imaginario.
Ujú,
Y uno, digamos, uno ve los edificios de Sadar Vuga y los que presenta, y se ven esas cosas, como
ujú.
tales ondulaciones, tales quiebres, o sea, tales ángulos no ortodoxos, ortogonales, ¿no? Tiene como...
Sí,
eh,
sí, es cierto. Es como, sí, sí, me parece que es súper preciso eso del diálogo tácito, que uno puede hacer más explícito o menos, pero que está sucediendo en ese plano, que de algún modo es como, es una cultura, ¿no? Es como un take en la cultura arquitectónica contemporánea, porque también me parece que tienen eso de querer estar en los problemas de hoy.
ujú,
Yo creo que el problema de la porosidad también tiene que ver con una voluntad de lo del espacio público, ¿no? Habla mucho de eso, de la introducción del espacio público en los edificios, como de saber que hay que refrescar el vocabulario y a lo que se aspira para poder siempre estar inscrito en un presente de cierto orden que no está en la fricción absoluta, digamos, no está en la radicalización de ninguna agenda, pero tampoco está repitiéndose a sí mismo, ¿no? Y pensaba estaba leyendo mientras esperábamos para arrancar el abstract que hay en la tapa, y es una cita de alguien hablando de su obra, ¿viste? De
ujú.
Andrea
Sí,
Rubin.
sí, sí.
Y no estamos
Sí,
yendo a eso también,
sí, sí,
¿no?
sí, sí, sí. Sí, me parece que hay una idea, eh, hay una idea muy linda en una conversación entre Michel Foucault y Gilles Deleuze, que empieza la conversación así y hablan como en otro contexto y sobre otras cosas, pero la relación entre teoría y práctica. Entonces, Deleuze dice eh, que básicamente una práctica, cuando se encuentra con un problema que no puede resolver, recurre a una teoría, y en ese sentido una práctica conecta teorías, y es el nodo que permite ir de una teoría a otra, ¿no? O sea, tiene múltiples teorías. Y en
Sí.
su reverso, la teoría, cuando se encuentra un problema que no puede resolver teóricamente, recurre a una práctica que dice esto, literalmente hace un agujero en una pared. Entonces una teoría sería lo que conecta eh, prácticas, ¿no? Lo cual me
Sí.
parece que es como, tiene muchas inversiones muy interesantes y relaciones como dadas vueltas que están muy bien. Y digo, en relación a lo que vos decís del el
Sí.
texto, digamos, eso es como una práctica que se encuentra con un problema que no puede resolver, recurre a una teoría para seguir avanzando.
Sí.
Eh,
Está
mm,
bueno. Sí, sí, sí. Sí, está buenísimo. Me parece un problema actual muy, muy interesante también, creo. Este que estamos diciendo, como del definirse de esta cosa más multifacética, pero que tiene que ver con esto en realidad, no solamente con pensar en distintos niveles, sino con pensar constructivamente, porque al final Deleuze es como una filosofía que arquitecturiza, ¿no? Arquitecturiza la filosofía en un punto con esto que acabas de decir, como que se vuelve un proceso creativo muy interesante. Está bueno, está muy interesante. La verdad es que me da ganas de ver la charla, digamos, mirando los edificios con este filtro, ¿no? Y ver qué te producen, porque después está todo el otro lado como más de dónde vienen, del momento histórico, en el que tienen como caen en un momento perfecto del país, de la economía, de la apertura, ¿no? Y todas esas cosas, pero creo que efectivamente es mucho más interesante mirarlos desde esta condición del club al cual se inventan, pertenecen, ¿no?
Sí, supongo que el último giro como interesante que podríamos dar es pensar que no es un club que preexiste, digamos. No lo sé si verifique, digamos, no estoy seguro que verifique, pero solo lo digo como
Sí.
uno podría pensar que hay un club por venir, digamos, en las obras, ¿no? Como de... sí, que uno se podría... Claro, uno se podría confundir y pensar que refiere a tal o cual persona, pero quizás es en realidad esas personas son, claro, son como expresiones de otras cosas.
Eso sería buenísimo, eso sería como, ¿no? Súper, sí.
Sí.
Bueno, qué pena que sea el último Redux, pero es el último Redux pandémico. No sabemos el año que viene, ¿no?
No se sabe.
No lo sabemos. Pero con un poco de suerte seguiremos haciendo nuestras tertulias, que las he disfrutado mucho, por cierto.
Totalmente.
Así que, bueno. Brindamos por
otros 16 más.
No es un water whisky, pero tenemos derecho también a saludarlo.
Claro, ¿no? Y el primero supongo que hay que empezar con un brindis, ¿no? Digamos, así.
Hagámoslo.
Bueno, nos vemos,
Manuel,
nos vemos en lo que sigue y vemos la conferencia de Boštjan ahora.
Muy bien.
Hasta luego.
Chao.
We'll get started. So welcome. This evening we have Boštjan Vuga coming and lecturing for us. It's a pleasure to have you, Boštjan, at the school. Boštjan studied at the Faculty of Architecture in Ljubljana and did his master's at the AA School of Architecture in the 90s, in the early 90s and in the mid 90s. In 1996 he founded Vuga with his partner in Ljubljana, at the TU Berlin, MSA Münster, Technischen Universität Graz, Politecnico de Milano, Confluence School of Architecture in Lyon. He's appointed Associate Professor for Architecture at the Faculty of Architecture in Ljubljana. He was a visiting critic at the A in London, and the Bauhaus in Dessau and the ETH in Zurich, among other places, and he's currently teaching at the AA a diploma unit, right? Diploma unit. He regularly lectures, like today, at architectural schools and different symposia events in Slovenia, in other countries, and he publishes profusely articles about architecture and urban planning, and he has edited several publications, among them the Plechnik 2007 issue for the AB Architecture Bulletin and series of publications for TU Berlin. Boštjan has participated as a co-curator at the Montenegro Pavilion, at the 14th Venice Biennale of Architecture in Venice, and since 2014 he has been president of the Council of the Museum of Architecture and Design in Slovenia. Has been recognized internationally, particularly in Europe, for the last 25 years or so, as one of the emergent and extremely productive and profuse offices emerging in the 90s, right after Slovenia became independent in the early 90s, and I think he's part and probably the leader, I would say, or at least one of the leaders in a process in which that accompanied the process of independence of Slovenia, together with a kind of boom in the production in Slovenia that created conditions for architecture to develop and explode in the local context. And he was, I believe, and that's at least the image that I, among others, have about him, of having led that process, engaging with production very directly, with a mix of rigor and smartness and capability to deal with the opportunities that were at hand, and I would say more importantly to capable to, on the one hand, move his generation and the further generations after him, operating as a sort of role model for the architect, internally in the discipline, and externally, I think him and his colleagues from his generations and after are a very interesting example of how architects can not only practice and take opportunity of the conditions of the political or economic context in which they produce, but also use that as a way or as a vehicle for, in a way, fighting for the role of the discipline and the social respect that the discipline may have in its social context. I think that's admirable about Boštjan at both levels. I think it goes beyond the work, the particularities of the work itself, themselves. Rather, it's a very interesting example of how a practice can lead internally the discipline and externally the practice. So I think that Boštjan is going to refer to that. It's also interesting how, and I don't know to what extent that is going to appear today, but I find it interesting to see how the office evolved along these decades. Particularly, we were discussing before about the effect of the crisis, the 2008 crisis in Slovenia, the change in the production model, the change of probably the relationship between Slovenia and Europe, and how that period of shrinkage in the production of architecture has contributed to a change in the role of or the change in the profile of how the office has engaged not only then with the local context but also more broadly with the European one, and has changed profile and changed even its internal organization. So, welcome Boštjan, it's really nice to have you here. You are a good friend and we're very proud to have you.
Thank you, Ciro. Thank you. So, welcome everyone. I'm gonna, if I speak too slowly or too fast or too, not loud enough, just tell me. So we can have like a more sort of informal presentation or lecture here. I always wanted to come to Buenos Aires. It was really like, one city on my list, which I wanted really to come. And yesterday, when Sebastian took me around, to show I got like a first glimpse, of I would say really the beauty of the city. maybe it's also the right time, to come, with everything is blooming and a lot of the purple colors, trees are around, so it's kind of refreshing to fly from dull and gray November in Europe to kind of spring in Buenos Aires. Okay, no, it's not this one. So, when I discussed with Ciro and Manuel about the presentation tonight, we actually, I sort of wrote to them, and then Manuel said, okay, it would be really good, if you can try to relate your production of the office to the local context. And this actually became very difficult, because relating to the office to the local context, something which is kind of you never really thought about, we never really thought about, okay, are we a local practice? Are we kind of, what are we doing with the local context? Are we actually just responding to the specificities of the local context? Are we denying that? Are we neglecting that? Or are we trying to change that? To kind of change, not upgrade, but just to kind of develop an additional layer, to enrich the local context. So basically what I'm presenting today, it's first I thought that the presentation will be called Porosities, very sort of academic title, but then it's really a review, basically a review of what I did in the last 2 weeks, when I put down this presentation together. A review of the 23 years of the office works. So you will see, it's non-linear. It's non-linear. It's kind of like a mix of different projects. It's a mix of different influences. So it's more like an assemblage of impressions, images of the projects, drawings and influences which came from the local context, and I think now that they sort of left an imprint to the office production. Yuri Sadar is my partner, and we started, we worked, he's 3 years older than me. We worked when we started at the university in Ljubljana, at the faculty in Ljubljana. And then he became an assistant at the school. I went to study to London, and then I came back from the AA. And then during the summer, we started working on the competition. We won a competition. I didn't go back to London, but we set up the office. So, and this kind of mixing or kind of merging between local and international, or local and foreign, it's still present in our office. Even today, he's teaching. We're both associate professors at the faculty in Ljubljana, but he has a regular position there, and I'm kind of, as Ciro said before, kind of like flying around and teaching at different schools in Europe. So we've been around for 23 years, and basically. Basically, we came we grew up very fast. We actually started with big projects, and we thought, first 10 years were really sort of just moving up, And then in 2008, we sort of really experienced the crisis. So it was kind of like a strong, kind of like a moment of sobriety, So it's kind of saying, okay, it's not possible to just kind of develop, get faster and faster, but you need to kind of reassess. And we're actually so hit by the crisis that we couldn't even close the office, liquidize the office, because we had too many open invoices, if I put it like that. So what we do, it's we are not specialized. We actually can do a small industrial object or a big stadium, as you will see here. And I actually, sort of while preparing this lecture, I kind of like tried to summarize, something which actually reads here as a PR statement, but it's not, because I think that if after 23, 24 years of practice, if you can still say, okay, I'm really interested in being sort of playful. I'm really interested in being sort of playing with humor, I really kind of like to test. I really like to kind of explore, to try new things, which of course it's now, after, practicing for so many years, much more difficult than at the beginning. Also, like all the load of the financial constraints of everything you have in your mind, it's much more present than, in the first 5-10 years. But, being able of, as a child, to still sort of be completely enthusiastic, when certain things actually develop like anew, so that you don't just have like stuff, detail is in the drawer, and you take it out and you just sort of plug into new projects. I think this is really interesting. And the way how we work, since the very beginning, it's like that, we constantly test, we constantly try different things, we constantly sort of try to develop new approaches, new ways, and this has become, I wouldn't say our style. We, as an office, we don't have a style, You will see like that our production is very different, But we have the approach. We have like, a kind of like the attitude towards the sitting or placing the building on the site, towards the tectonics, towards the way how you move through the building, towards the way, how you experience the building. So, let's say, this 213 people, who worked in our office, it's a lot, So it means, that, we pass like through a big fluctuations of the office, but we now, just realize, there are in Ljubljana 10 offices, younger offices, which are set by people who used to work in our office. So in a way, you breed your own competition, which is good, this is basically, why we also need to kind of reassess or to sort of rethink and the way how we work, and why we can still sort of afford to be playful, to be sort of not just mature guys, but also someone, who can sort of lead discussion or have a discussion with younger generation. So this is where we are. This is where we are, and Ljubljana is, it's here in the center of Slovenia, and Slovenia is in, I would say, in the center of influences coming from the east, north, and west. So east, and you will see also in our project, east from the Balkans, north from the Germany or German influence, and west it's like Roman and Italian. And then this, it's Slovenia is kind of like at the crossroads, And when you start thinking about the influence of the local context, it's actually a local context in this small country. It's mixed with the influences from all these three bigger or larger geographical areas. I'm going like through a set of postcards. So it's the city. It's as Cyril said before, it's really beautiful. Now it's becoming like too beautiful. It's too picturesque, It's kind of like almost like a postcard. And it has it all. It has like a castle. It has a hill. Castle on the hill, like a Baroque medieval town, like a river which runs through, and then the 19th century development, like the grid structure, which then extends into the 20th century. So, and then you have like these three squares, the square here, the round one, the circular one, the square of the 19th century, and the main square of the mid-19th century development, with the university building here. This is the university building. And then you see in the background, you see two towers. And these two towers are actually the two towers of the Square of the Republic. And I'm gonna point it out to this urban void. Urban void, the Republic Square in the center of the city. This is the Parliament, the civilian Parliament, a department store, and the void, which is basically not a lively square. It's not a square, which would be used as a public space for the big activities, But it's kind of like a void, an empty space. So, and whenever you are there, you actually feel as being completely lost. You feel, that you're experience the emptiness. But this is, and for instance, last year there was a big survey by the municipality, asking what shall we do with this urban space, I mean, shall we actually, bring activities, build temporary projects there, to kind of make it lively, And basically at the end of this survey, I mean, it was just found it out, that people, the inhabitants of the city, they accepted that void, They accepted that space, which actually changes the cuteness of the city, the scale of the city, into something which is more grand, which is large. So the Republic Square is actually an empty space. It's almost like a front plaza, for these two towers, Built, these are the towers. One is the bank, and one is, before it was the headquarters of Iskra, one of the most important Slovenian electro producer. Now it's the place or the seat of different embassies or political organizations. But these kind of brutalist towers in front of the main square of the Republic define the center of Ljubljana of the second half of the 20th century. And they also have a certain influence to the way how we think, So it's basically how you change from the small and cute into a large and kind of uncanny, also unfamiliar. And the two towers, I mean, they're called the Southern Gate, the gate which actually doesn't lead anywhere, but they have this position of, you see them wherever you are in the city. So the tower which is in the middle, it's the first tower of Ljubljana, built in 1929, called a skyscraper, a beautiful Art Deco tower. So the two towers on the Square of the Republic, and then the first project I'm going to show you of the authors is Sports Park, 5 kilometers away, on the outer ring of the city, which we developed with a competition in 1997, so 22 years ago, and it's still ongoing. So this is kind of the fact of, the fact that the two big projects kind of start to be in sort of related, You see here, so this is the Ljubljana of the 80s, 90s. The towers there are end of the 70s, and the two buildings, the sports hall and the stadium. The multi-purpose sports hall and the football stadium. So the two buildings and the void in between. The space, the large space in between, which is actually a big park, public park, on the roof of the shopping center. So this kind of like, again, like two buildings, and then, you know, the big green void, green big space on the roof of the shopping center. This is the project as it was designed more than 10 years ago. I'm going to go very quickly to kind of how the project the design works. This is what was there before, and the most important thing was, you know, that there was the height difference of 9 meters between the street level and the gravel pit ground, you know. So 9 meters, and then actually what we did, we sort of infill this 9 meters difference of the site, you know, with all the program which is here, like the sports hall, the stadium, retail, and the parking. Retail is here, you know, because it was a public-private partnership. The private partner would provide a retail, you know, and in order to do that, you know, he could or he should build the hall and the stadium. This is kind of like the section through the model, you know, like you see the mall and the mall under and the green area above and the two buildings. You know. The stadium, it's a small stadium. It's a stadium of 17,000, 18,000 spectators, which is actually just the edge, you know, it can compete for the Euro match games, you know. 17 or 16,000, it's the limit. So, and when we designed that, you know, we actually said, okay, I mean, it's not a big stadium, it's something like, you know, you see, there, yeah, there, okay. Yeah. So basically, it's not a big stadium which would actually sort of be present in the city as the big building. So we sunken the stadium into this sort of like slab, or like the mezzanine or the park level. And what you see, it's only the roof. It's a crater of the roof. But then when you get closer and then you go down, actually we wanted to create this suspense, you know, that you are actually entering this sort of the stadium where the atmosphere would be kind of comparable to the atmosphere of big stadiums, you know. So that's why this really big and heavy roof. Not a light roof, you know, but heavy roof. And heaviness and, you know, kind of heaviness and mass, it's something, you know, which you will see, it's kind of present in our project. Well, what we do, it's not about the lightness, but it's about like massiveness. What we do, it's not about elegance, but it's about like awkwardness, you know, like something, you know, which is maybe even ugly, but becomes kind of interesting. So this large grid, large cantilever actually provides a very good acoustic background. Acoustic, it becomes kind of very good. Acoustic means for the atmosphere in the stadium. You know. So when you are there, you know, when the match is going on, you know, the sound, it's really the sound which you would not expect, you know, in the stadium like that. And the feeling, it's like, I mean, the stadium, because of this roof, you know, becomes, and the smallness, you know, it's almost like an interior project, you know. I mean, you feel that you are almost in the interior space, you know. So the other interior, I mean, a proper interior is the basketball arena. Actually, it's a multi-purpose arena where the basketball field is the smaller one, and the volleyball, actually, handball is the largest one. It's for the European size, it's a big arena, 14,000 spectators. And here what we wanted to do, I mean, here you see the difference, between the roof. It's also play between kind of like the heavy roof of the stadium and kind of a little bit like lighter, but still very present dome roof of the arena. I mean, structurally, this is really interesting, because it was an exercise, how you develop a dome above an oval plan, and that's why you have all this bracing actually help to bring like to distribute the forces equally towards the ground. What I really would like to kind of point it out here, it's the way how the roof sits on the stalls, on the tribunas. It's basically, it's when you sit here, when you sit on the upper seat, you can actually look down to the court, to the plate, to the match, or you look out. And this was possible, because the concourse and the interior of the hall, it's not separated. You have like sprinklers above, which provide like the same fire compartment. This was really important for us, in order to kind of create this visual and spatial porosity between the park and the interior of the building. So it's not the arena would be, like a very sort of a box where the very kind of strong border between interior and exterior. But here we would sort of provide like all these views from the interior, from the inside towards the outside. And when you go around, you also actually, by having different views, you sort of orient yourself, where you are in the hall. Also in the VIP area, this connection between the happening here and the balconies which are here, or like the terraces, was very important. So as much as it was possible, we kind of opened the space of the performance, like matches from the interior towards the outside. And also like the canopy, which spans around, provides like, this transition between the space of the park and the space of the concourse, and then from the space of the concourse into the inside of the arena. You see this sort of relationship to the 70s structure. This is like a big, massive hall, deep, massive arena, which stands on the, we call that like a city balcony, because this is the level, 9 meters difference level to the street, so it's the level of the park. And then here, this is a photo, maybe like 2012, and nothing has happened until then. I mean, since then, it's still like that, because we have like the arena and the stadium kind of operating and functioning.
It's better to turn off the lights.
I mean, do as you, I'm perfectly fine. You can switch off the light. Yeah. I mean, then make it, that becomes like more visible. It's better, huh? Yeah. This is actually a very interesting space. This kind of like tribunal. So you see here that half is done, half is not done, and this is basically the condition as it is right now. So you work like crazy, for 4 years, to have this construction done. The opening was August 2010, not because of the, like any kind of important sports deadline, but because of the mayor had to start running for the re-election, and this was actually his main project. And then when he was re-elected again, the private partner, I'm referring to 2011, bankrupted, This also left a strong imprint to the office, And then what happened that you actually start experience your own archaeology, And this becomes like really, really interesting, because as soon as you, when you experience that as a failure, when you go there to that side and say, okay, I can, why it's not the shopping center as we designed there, like why this, why this didn't happen, it's a frustration. But then when you start observing this as a beauty of unprogrammed spaces, when you change this attitude, when it becomes much more interesting, the space as it is here, as it is now, when you see the potential of that, I think this is a very good moment. So the condition is still like this. This has been sold to another private client. Now there are some Arabs, who are coming to the office. We're working with them, on the schemes and so on and so on. We actually did like a couple of years ago a students' workshop where students from different faculties of architecture came up with proposals what could be done in this 80,000 square meters area. But as I said, I think it's really, you go there now and then you have like the shooting, you have like even, there are guys with motorbikes, driving around. So the space itself, even, if I bring people and take them to the site, first I show like the stadium and the sports hall, and then, we finish here, and then everyone says, okay, this is really like the ultimate, because it's really, being, a construction site and the ruin at the same time, it has this potential of being unfinished. But this could be like another lecture. So I just wanted to complete with this, So this gutter, like the really thick and large edge of the sports hall is actually a gutter for all the rainwater which sort of comes down from the roof. And instead of kind of like hiding or making like sort of like sophisticated and Nancy, we sort of deliberately show it and make it like stronger, make it like really, really large. I'm jumping to completely another scale, but this sort of like dealing with double curved surface, with the grid of the double curved surface, came into play with this small project. It's a fountain in my hometown, on the Italian border. It's like 8 by 2.5 meters. It's not a big sports hall, but it's actually still one of my favorite projects. There are basically two shells, concave and convex, which merge together in order to create this object on the square. We call it like a landscaper. Basically, it's a fountain which simulates the way how actually water, the river Socha, which actually runs between the two buildings. You see them in the background. And I would like to point it out here to this guy here. So it's this concrete leg. It's not hidden. The gutter is not hidden. The leg is not hidden, but becomes this kind of like awkward or ugly element playing with the smoothness and color and sort of curvature of the fountain itself. What was really, I would say, like beautiful and satisfactory for an architect, that the fountain actually turned into a playground. I mean, something, which we didn't plan it before, we didn't thought of before. We said, okay, the fountain it's not just an element which is to be seen from the distance. The fountain essentially becomes an element where kids start to play, to kind of discover their, these hidden micro ambiences or hidden spaces, climb up, or simply sort of like use that as a playground. And this sort of participation, like engagement in the architecture form itself, sort of start creating or generating completely different life on the square. So it means that there is a connection between the form and the social life. Here it's jumping from the fountain to the panoramic garden, and again this sort of like big pot, like the structure of the garden. It's actually the big pot, plant pot, which spans through this space and defines different micro ambiences of playing or playing, for office hours or like after office hours. I mean, this is actually a sort of like a club space on the top of the chamber of commerce. So the space, which was actually, I mean, this was the first project which we did, like almost like the renovation on the building, we designed before, like coming back 5-6 years after. And we play here with a garden, and this is on top of the building, so it's a panoramic garden. And we actually thought of saying of a structure which at the same time would become like how would you put it, like an atmosphere provider. So it's a structure which spans through the space, provides like a atmosphere of the garden. But then also the shading. The shading becomes kind of a bristle becomes a structure which suspends sort of the glazing and enables like different views towards the city. So bristle, it's a main structure element which actually suspend and support the glazing and also the plant pot in the space. I mean, by saying that, we're moving to a different space. So what is the structure? Can the structure become an ornament? Can a structure become like something which is not just structure but provides like an atmosphere, provides like a different, sort of usage and feeling in the space? This moves us to an influence of, I would say, a Austro-Hungarian or Austrian Germanic influence to our work. So it's ornament. From ornamental structure to ornament on the facade. You have like ornament on the facade, like pixels, different pixels, which becomes kind of an expression of the membrane, becomes an expression of the building itself. So I would not like to relate directly to the previous examples, but here at this condominium, like the building, the residential building we designed in 2004, we sort of thought of using pixels as the way to relate it to the nature in the surrounding. So you have like a big windows, the black windows, which in a way becomes almost like a structure. I mean, here on this photo you see that the window frames, I mean, they look like as they would be the main structural elements of the building. It's kind of like really a play of achieved by this sort of treatment, ornamental or pattern treatment of the membrane. This is how the building sits in the surrounding. Actually, it's not even sort of like visible or exposed, depending on the season. So, for example, in the spring, you will see, how the pixels, if I put like the pixels of the green, actually merge and relate with the pixel of the facade. And this building, we wanted to create a kind of feeling or atmosphere of the oasis. So you will, when you enter from the city into the building, you will, as we said, you will actually come to vacation, or kind of, you will enter into completely different world. So it's really like an abundance of material patterns, like colors, which then kind of relate you and bring you into the sort of strange space in Ljubljana, which is much more like a space of like southern countries, something like a space where you would not expect in the sort of like middle-sized European city, with a winter garden where sort of people who live here will gather and have their meetings, or like a summer garden here. Winter and summer garden, they become kind of like a space of meeting of the people who live here. So, and this idea of the south, something which is not northern, which is not eastern, but is southern, is something which we are really interested in. The idea of atmosphere of, let's say, Mediterraneization, of something which is Mediterranean, which is something which is not really Slovenian, which is something which actually has like roots in Italy or in kind of like warmer sort of parts of the world. And since Ljubljana is on this crossroads, like we sort of use or play with that. This is a project, we completed, or it was completed a couple of years ago, where the pattern, see here, becomes kind of like one of the main new identity provider for the main road, main boulevard, which actually run from the south to the north of the city. So, and the first phase was actually really like 700 meters of the center, where we were asked, this is a common work with three offices, to develop a scheme where this space of the road would become kind of a shared space for public transport, cyclists, and pedestrians. So actually, how you transform the road space of the city, which was actually like a shortcut if you want to come like from the north to the south, into something which would become kind of a pleasant public space. What is the role of the materiality? What is the role of the, colors, of the, texture, of the structure, and all that? So, how could one imagine that you can put like a table like that in the previously really like a traffic light space? So, is that a space which, by having this strong southern pattern, becomes like more attractive? I mean, if you go to Instagram and you find like this Slovenska boulevard, you will see all these selfies, or actually, how do you call this, footies, People take like Instagram photos with this pattern. So kind of like a strong identity provider. If you want to kind of like change the space from traffic to pedestrian, you need to kind of provide something which would be an identity provider. And here, you know, the pattern, this yellow and black was kind of like a strong device in that. These patterns and ornaments, it's part of the Ljubljana, this building from the 1920s, 1930s, Art Deco and Secession, you know, which are present in the city center. So actually, I mean, we try to kind of take something which is there and transform it in order to kind of enrich the context, you know. This is the building from the Square of the Republic, where you see in the 60s, so 65, 66, it's sort of like it's not a strong, sober, pure modernism, but it's a modernism with kind of ornamental touch. It's a modernism with sort of like a feeling where you start, it's a modernism which is different of sort of like pure and white modernism. It's a modernism where atmosphere, structure, atmosphere, textures, materiality, ornaments play in a very kind of smooth way with that. This is what we, you know, did like 2 years ago for it's a small wine rack, you know, but based in again, you know, in this kind of transformation of how like a modular element, ceramic, I mean made of ceramic, could become something which relates to the Slovenian traditional culture, but at the same time it's very modern, very contemporary. Basically, it's produced by the same guys who do the stoves, you know, for peasant house. We play, as you see in this environment, you know, with really different, I mean, one could even call us mannerisms, you know, because we take like elements and then we just kind of try to merge them together. This is a building, it's a golf club, golf members' house in the north of Ljubljana, and I would just like to kind of point it out again to the structure. Is here kind of like an abundance of structure? Is here something, you know, which is not needed, like for example these beams here? Something which is there, you know, just for the visual effect or for the atmospheric effect. This is also something which I would say it's in the local context. I'll show you how original condition. This was in the 70s, and then this is actually what we provided or designed like 2 years ago. I would just like point out the connection between the roof here and the roof here. So it's the glass pavilion, it's a dining pavilion, it's an extension of the salon inside, and it plays this relation between the old traditional roof, you know, like a really big, massive roof, and you know the grids, which is a structural grid of the roof, then becomes a non-structural grid of the brise-soleils of the pavilion. So this kind of change of, you know, how you actually deal with structure. I mean, can you afford that? You know, can you do that? Can you actually change the structure in a way that becomes like a bristle? Can you change the structure in a way that becomes an ornament? You know? And you see here again like this abundance of grids here. Maybe there are too many. There are too many elements which will then create, I would say, an interesting condition, you know, that when the pavilion opens up, you know, you don't have like any corners, and you have this, again, heavy roof, heavy gridded roof, like in the stadium, framing the landscape around you. I'm gonna, you know, just mention, you know, Plečnik. Plečnik is all around. You know. All around, Plečnik is probably the most important and the most influential, not probably, but it is. He is kind of like the father of the Slovenian architecture. And why is he interesting? I mean, he is interesting because he is kind of deviant. You know, he actually, you know, as you see here on this photo, you know, you have like columns which are not Tuscan columns, you know, like used to support a wooden beam, you know. Everything what you see here is almost wrong, you know. And this sort of playing and being wrong, like on with purpose, is something which is, I would say, like really striking, you know. It becomes kind of ambiguous. It becomes sort of like unpredictable. It's something, you know, which really irritates you, because it actually changes your perception on what is wrong and what is right. For example, here again, you know, the abundance, you know, the number of structure which is not needed in order to create this sort of effect of the entrance, to the space which is not a space of, you know, everyday life, but it's a space of, you can even call it afterlife. It's a very interesting technique of how you sort of affect sort of human perception. Or maybe like this one, it's, you know, it's from the Central Market. You have like the column and the beams and the column and the thickness of the columns. The slenderness of the column and the thickness of the beam are actually not in proper and the right relation. So this is the Central Market, the fish market in Ljubljana. He designed in the 30s, and this is actually the bridge, the butcher's bridge, according to his design. And what is interesting here is this sort of, again, ambiguity. What you see, it's a temple, but this temple, it's on the water. So what you see, it's the house which happened to be a bridge, or the bridge which happened to be a house. And in 2008, there was a competition. We entered the competition, we didn't win, you know, but this was actually our proposal as a kind of paraphrase of that bridge. You know. So how would you do a bridge today, you know, which would not be just that you device that you cross from A to B or from one make to another, but it's a bridge as a destination itself, like an inhabited bridge. So three slabs, three porous slabs, which are then connected with these sort of stalactites or stalagmites type of columns in order to create this stiff surface, you know, which connects like embankments on two levels. Here you see with like extension of the central market space. And then you go down, and here in this sort of like very sort of low compressed space. So these two levels, connection with the spiral stairs in the middle, the structure of the bridge is actually moved from the perimeter, which is against, you know, I mean, the structure of the bridge is always at the edge of the perimeter, in order to create like a space on the river. So you will go there just to kind of like sit there and enjoy a view to the river. Or for example, like moments like here where the bridge actually ends up with a balcony to the embankment. So bridge which doesn't connect the embankment then becomes like a balcony to the embankment. Or actually spirals down and becomes a pontoon bridge for the boats. You know. I mean, this is still one of my favorite projects, and I'm kind of quite happy, you know, that the museum actually acquired like the model of this, you know, as an example of, you know, the projects which were not built, you know, but they had like a certain quality. I'm again here on the marketplace, and you see again the structure. You know, it's sort of like a colonnades which actually create a certain type of urban space, which was not there before in Ljubljana. So Plečnik really wanted to kind of change the local context with architecture, with the way how he sort of introduced these sort of like wrong elements into the main of the city space. Or you go inside one of the, you know, really beautiful space of the National Library. Again, like too much of the structure, too massive, in order to kind of create a very specific spatial effect. So, and that's him from, I would say, like a single hand from 1930s. You know, a really strong figure. You know, with many epigons, you know, and, you know, even today, you know, it's in the school, you know, we're constantly confronted with Plečnik. And the more you try to avoid him, the closer you get. You know. So it's really interesting, you know, how, I mean, he was actually named the first postmodernist. You know. But what is really interesting is that he is really a master in how you sort of turn or shift the things. You know, how to actually how to actually work against the canon, how to work against something which is taken for granted. You know. His student was Edward Raunica, the one from the Two Towers and the Square of Republic. So it's one hand from the 30s, the second hand from the 60s and 70s. And what actually our generation tried to do is to kind of, you know, de-establish, or kind of like deconstruct this sort of like presence of the kind of strong master egos or demiurgs. You know. So what we try to do, you know, with Six-Pack generation, with all the guys, you know, who actually of my generation who studied abroad and then came back to Ljubljana, is to show that in this relatively small territory, it's a space and place for pluralism, for kind of like a different approach, with different approaches which can coexist together. In the, you know, throughout the 20th century, this was impossible. I mean, both Raunica and Plečnik, they had, like, you know, their counterparts in the city, in the school as well, and there was kind of a constant fight. You know, who is stronger? Who is stronger as kind of like a strong female, strong male ego architect? So, what, as I said, you know, what our generation tries is to kind of really show that pluralism and diversity is actually something which sort of enriches, if you want it like this, local context. This is on the this one is the last building of Edward Raunica, the one who built the Two Towers, you know, built in the 1984, like the last kind of like his interpretation of postmodernism. So it's also interesting that someone who is really like a strict modernist, then turn in the later age and becomes kind of like a postmodernist. So it's this is a complex of National Gallery. You see the late 19th century National Home, which then turned into National Gallery. The 1980s New Wing, and there was a space in between. It was one of the first projects of the office. First or second competition we won was the competition for the new entrance hall, for the space which would be like a missing link between the two buildings. This missing link is actually at the end of the street, between the street and the park. And the missing link is not, the competition asked, the main reason for that was actually the placing of the fountain, of the original, of the Baroque fountain, which was moved from the town square into the building. And how we responded? We responded again. It's something which you would call like abundance of the steel structure, not with a glass cube, but something which would be where the structure would create like a specific atmosphere. So this is the entrance. Very low. You are in a kind of like very sort of kind of anti-monumental, like almost like a, I would say, bus station transitory space, and then next to it is, this is how when it opens up. So, and the whole space is actually defined by 3 sets of these metal frames, which varies in heights and length and width, which creates a different micro ambiences within this mono volume. This slab, the mezzanine, was actually something which was not asked in the brief. We actually moved the fountain from the axis in order to place the mezzanine, and the mezzanine became kind of like an added value to the gallery. So this is the space, which could become like a very quiet space, detached from the root of the gallery. We go there and you see the park on one side or the city on the other side, sort of framed with this sort of slender steel structure, repetitive steel structure. This was actually like a big challenge for the structural engineer, because all the horizontal loads are in the slabs and in the connections here, where the sunshades for shading are actually stored. When you are here, you move through these completely different ambiences. Like low, high, darker, lighter. Achieved only by repetitive, but repetitive structure which vary. But what is more important, or the most important, as the kids who are playing on the fountain, this space, has become kind of like a stage set for different events. Something, which we didn't program, which was not programmed in the brief. Like the way how the concert is organized or arranged here becomes like in a completely different setting here, or like setting here. The space itself has really, this entrance hall has really become like I would say like a space which radiates the nature of the National Gallery as a sort of like a dull and quite boring institution. And again, the structure. You know, like this interest, our interest to structure as a device to create, you know, spatial sequence, spatial experience, and even the atmosphere. This is actually the first project of the office, the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, this project actually helped the office to be set up. You know, by having won this competition, we set up the office in 1996. You know, it's still. I mean, still today. This year is the 20th anniversary. It's still very much present, you know. This is from that, the image is from there, you know, and this is from last year. I would say like it dates well. I mean, you see that it's kind of like worn and used, you know, but I think it dates well, you know. So it also allows like for different configuration and changes within the building. The space itself, like the front plaza, it's not the front plaza of the Square of the Republic, but it's the front plaza, was also something which was not asked in the brief, you know. I mean, we made the building like really compact, and then by this compactness we gain the space of the plaza and provide that kind of really vertical experience of the space inside. So it's vertical hall. The whole Chamber of Commerce actually is developed throughout this vertical hall of 8 floors, which changes and provides these different like spatial sequences or different views and connections. So you are seen and you are seen or you could see, you know. And because of that, you know, one can argue that also the social interaction among people in the chamber is sort of stimulated. So vertical connection, vertical perception is also social interactions are sort of linked here. And these 5-6 boxes are actually positioned in front of the very normal, very standard office lab. So you have like the office spaces behind, and then the three-dimensional structural facade in front of you. So this placing of something, you know, which is completely sort of, it doesn't fit together. You know? Something, you know, which becomes a new facade. It's also present in this church. I mean, this is actually my sort of favorite project of Plečnik, where you have the tower and the access to the church, like the main hall or the main the hall of the church is actually on the first floor, and the building itself, like this one, looks like a building from like a peasant house. So a peasant house, the hall, and the core, it's on the first floor. On the ground floor, you know, it's where the priest lives, and then the tower, which is in front. And a very strange, very sort of uncanny condition. Or, for example, you know, the church, again, Plečnik in Prague. I mean, you see this from the outside, and you would never expect that the space like that, it's inside. So this kind of like continuous white ramp, you know, which brings you up to the top one, where you see through the clock on one, the glass clock on one side, and the other side you see Prague in a, you know, from a new perspective. So it's kind of like almost like Le Corbusier space, sort of clad it in this sort of ornamental structure. I'm going to show you like the last project, you know, because it's kind of like really long, you know. It's the only project I'm showing which is not in Slovenia, or not in Ljubljana, it's in Ghent. It's the project which is finished. I mean, it will open in spring next year. And here I would also like to relate, how the local context of Belgium, meets kind of the influence of the local context from Slovenia. This was the competition diagram. So instead of developing the corridor, which actually we developed like a sort of like a study scape here marked with this green, with the two atrium and the loop, public loop, which actually sort of rises up and bring people and inform people what's going on in the school. Very simple plan. Two lamellas of classrooms. The central space of the two atriums and the special classrooms in the middle. Very simple section. You see, like the heights of 3 floors are really different. It's kind of like a standard height, very sort of like condensed, and then the sort of open high space. And this is now there are recent photos, maybe like a couple of weeks ago I took them. So we have a kind of a very porous space of the Faculty of Social Works in the University of Ghent. And this porosity is actually achieved by the brise-soleils, which actually these sort of like lamellas of composite which wrap around the building, provide like the shading, provide like a protection of the fire escapes around the building, and provide also the kind of the, I would say, like the typical image of the building, where in the outskirts of the campus in Ghent. So when you enter almost like under the skin. You're in this space transition between outside and inside. You're here. You're between the thermal facade, the fire sort of passerellas, which are also which could be used also for entering or exit the classrooms, and the set of fiberglass lamellas. And then you are inside. You are inside of the space of the atrium. We photos of work in progress, which become like a space which presents the activity of the school. I mean, the Faculty of Social Works is actually the faculty which shows like the public, how, like social works is done, how you actually teach, how you sort of perform like with some different categories of different kind of groups of people. Lit from above is sort of dispersed light into the space where we play with this kind of like a Magritte blue, and very kind of different approach to detailing as we had it in Ljubljana. The space will be rough. I mean, as you see here, very kind of just blue and this sprayed ceiling, as you see here. The space which become a kind of, I would say, like a framework, or like a hardware for events or happenings which students, people, who work there, would actually change and enrich. Here you see like this is a classroom, like a music room, which then opens up and becomes like an auditorium, like a small chamber on the second floor. So the loop of these stairs, which actually smoothly takes you up to the top. On the top floor will be the cantina, the cafeteria, and the space for this informal working. So and then from that blue beige kind of atrium, you enter through sort of dark green space of the kind of like it's two doors. You know, it's a different fire compartment. You know, into a set of classrooms, which were actually the green and the orange changes according to the position in the building. So the color coding becomes again like the vehicle or means for identification. And what I really like is this kind of like mistakes, or like the way how the corners, the lamellas doesn't come together, they don't come together, which actually shows exactly like why they are there, you know. And you know, like on the south, of course, different, and they're on the west are optimized in a different way. You know. So when you walk around, I mean, the building now, for the time being, it's really like a monolith on this like very beautiful, you know, green lawn, you know, as a sort of like a front plaza before you enter the building. Thank you. This was quite long.
No, it was good. More? Okay. Photographer wants more light. Thank you, Boštjan. It was very interesting to see the work, actually, to see it like you showed it today. You usually show it with Plečnik and Ravnikar examples around, or just
Never.
as a response to...
It was actually like the first time, you know.
Yeah.
That's why I said, you know, that I did like a review, you know, and yeah, I mean, we discussed like Plečnik and Ravnikar, but you know, to kind of really see, you know, what is the treatment of structure, you know, Plečnik use, and how we relate it, you know. Andreas Ruby wrote like an article on our work, you know, which was called, you know, that we never relied to Plečnik with form, you know.
You never relate?
Relate with the form, you know, but always with a kind of like spatial principles or like sequences, you know, and as he put it, also with humor, you know.
Yeah, no, because I always associated both with their times, but always in a sort of strange way, because Plečnik is a sort of late pre-modern architect in a way. No, it's like I mean, you say I never heard someone saying talking about Plečnik as a first postmodern. I always saw him as a retro modern, as a modern that goes against the canon of modernism by bringing back into modernism resources that are previous to modernity. But it's interesting to see it like that, and in that sense, it's interesting to see also Ravnikar under that same light, because when one sees Ravnikar's projects as being sort of brutalist or more kind of heavy-handed and so on, one doesn't really include the fact that they are carefully sort of criticized in the details.
Almost like craft.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really like very meticulous and kind of counterintuitive to see that in buildings that are supposedly heavy-handed and bold. So I was thinking that actually both things are. I never saw the relationship actually with your work, and today I saw it much clearer actually. For example, all the references that you made about structures as being heavy when they have to be light, or light when they have to be heavy, or spaces being extremely banal or deserted somehow. There is something that is, as you said, no, like humoristic about that. But there is something also. I mean, I don't know. There is something really kind of counterintuitive in that. No? It's interesting to see, and there is a sort of. It's interesting to see it in that tradition. So I was thinking, what you thought was the reason for that somehow, like the reason through the generations for that as a sort of Slovenian.
I think it's. I mean, I had like an interesting discussion with Andreas Ruby. You know, it's saying that this influence. You know, you can also say that Plečnik is a manierist. Also, Ravnikar, in terms of the modernism, it's a manierist. You know, the way how he did masonry and all the detailings and so on. You know. And if you think that maybe this, but it's a speculation, it's a mixture of all these different influences, like German, Italian, the Balkans, with this kind of like heaviness, and it's really, I would say it's really this kind of like specificity of the place, And if you think about Plečnik, it's basically, his work in Vienna, even in Prague, it's more. So the church I showed you, it's probably like the last example, where you would have like inside completely detached of the outside. So when the inside, it's interior, like it's completely different than the exterior. In Ljubljana, this becomes like much more connected, merged, and also strange in a way. So, and this estrangement, estrangement, it's really interesting. It is kind of, because you need to put your own kilojoules of energy to kind of adapt to these conditions, And if you compare it, Plečnik is usually compared with Asplund and Leverens, but they're from the north and they're much more coherent. Plečnik is playful. I mean, and once we were taught in the school, that you need to suffer to produce architecture. But then when you start understanding the work of Plečnik, it's really like a play. I mean, it's basically, you say, okay, I know how to do with that, so that's why I can start playing,
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, like, for example, if you compare it with Asplund, even if there is that kind of irony in Asplund, or this kind of counterintuitive relationship to canon, the irony is somber and somehow too serious.
It's very serious.
Very serious. While there is something really light about Plečnik. It's like even if the buildings are quite heavy sometimes, there is something really like hollow. Plečnik, So anyway, who has questions from the audience?
Just one thing. Maybe it's not such an interesting question for you, but it seems that you also brought something from London, from your experience in London. So maybe that I don't know how you define that, how you describe that. What's your?
I didn't want to talk about that.
You didn't. I'm sorry. Then maybe.
No. It's actually You know, in what I learned in London, it's actually to kind of like fight against the preconceived, the kind of the given, you know. So, I mean, I went through kind of like a course of Jeff Kipnis, who was really like really sort of bad guy, you know, as a sort of like as a teacher, you know. So whatever you think that it's right, he said no, it's right when would be something wrong, you know. So basically, the Chamber of Commerce, you know, I graduated in, I don't know, in 1995, you know, and then in 96 we won that competition, which in a way it's I would say kind of like a summary of everything what I learned in London, like about the scale, you know, about the kind of structure, you know, how you play with sort of verticality, you know, how you develop like relational space, not how you develop like a space where relations are more important than the objects or the particles, you know. So I mean, all these things, you know, came from London, you know. And then when the chamber was built, I mean, everyone said, you know, that it's really not contextual, you know, because it's of course, you know, it was just there, you know. And now, like after 20 years, you know, it has become like very contextual, you know. Like the first level of contextualization happened with it's funny, with a nickname. So the Chamber of Commerce, it's still today addressed as Esmeralda.
What?
Esmeralda.
Esmeralda.
Yeah, because it was I think that 20 years ago there was this Mexican soap opera with Esmeralda. So for example, the condominium, they call like it's Salamander. So it's, and you know, the level of when people nickname the building, this is like the first level of customization. But to go back to your question, you know, I'm in 2007, you know, like for the 50 years of death of Plečnik, I edited this issue on Plečnik, which was basically edited in a way, you know, how one could learn in the Anglo-Saxon culture. It means, you know, that perceiving Plečnik as a architecture source, not as an art historian figure, you know. So, and the idea was, you know, how you write instruction manual for Plečnik work, you know. And this is still an idea. I mean, that thing actually was just a start, you know. But really to sort of present all the discrepancies, all the dichotomies, you know, like everything what is kind of like a taking for granted, but it's wrong, as something, you know, a young architect or architects actually learn from that. I mean, with Plečnik is still in Slovenia and today now, like there are these discussions that everything what Plečnik did should become like a UNESCO protected. It's kind of like a big question. Yeah. I mean, he is really a figure, you know, in a small, let's say, in 300,000 people, you know, of Ljubljana, you know. It's still very present. You know. And then Ravnica, you know, all these kind of like big figures, you know, which mark the city. I mean, you know, when you go when you walk around the center of the city, you walk just like from another plectring to another plectring, or from another Ravnica to another Ravnica. And maybe this was also like sort of response to our office, not to repeat. I mean, we built like next to the condominium, like 400 meters away. It's another residential building, which is completely different. But this sort of like tendency for testing, tendency for kind of exploring, tendency, that what you do, it's a kind of like constant work in progress, Maybe this is something, which came from London.
I was looking at the name of the lecture is about porosity, and you mentioned just at the end some porosity spaces, but all the work was working with that, and I think that in some ways it's something that is very intelligent, because you are working with like very big programs, big scale buildings with a lot of constrictions, and the way you introduce porosity into spaces are also leading the way your project installs or starts a new research about what the project is. For instance, in this building you have maybe the program in 2 bars that are like very strict and you didn't say anything about that, and I think that's very, very intelligent, because it's a way to how to manage with this kind of buildings that you introduce your interest in some parts, and in some parts you say, okay, I won't talk about that. And I would like to, if you can, because that's also related with ambiguity, and that example that you showed about, I don't know if it was Lepnik with the church. That it was, you talk about the stair and the tower, but then in the back it was a typical building with a roof, and maybe if you can say something about that.
So we are very much interested in porosity, in different kind of porosities. I mean, it's spatial porosity, it's environmental porosity, and also social porosity. And for example, this building, in a way, when it will open and will function, I hope that it will really demonstrate, all these 3 different levels. So porosity, I think, is really something we as architects can control. Because if you take like the porosity means the amount of void in the physical substance. But then if you think like environmentally, how the transition spaces, for example, like the building you did, are all about even more than the spatial, it's environmental porosity. The transition between, front garden into interior, and then the exterior, and then the exterior into the exterior of the garden on the other side of the street. So if you have all, and then let's say social porosity, it's, for example, in this building, what is meant on the roof, it's a kind of like a summer. They don't allow summer cinema, but it's kind of like a summer classroom, which is meant to be for people not from the school, but from Ghent, So, and you would have, like a public route, public promenade through the building, which is a faculty building. And this is what I think is this social porosity, you know. Or for example, that you have in the National Gallery, you know, you have like the events, you know, you're a kind of a visitor of the exhibition, but then the concert goes on, you know. So it's completely different social groups with two completely different intentions in meeting. And this is something which started with the interest of publicness, how you generate the publicness, you know. I mean, you generate the publicness also in a way that you make a building very narrow, and you leave the space in front. And because you leave the space in front, you know, that demonstrator actually can come there, you know, and protest, you know. So it's, and these are all the architecture. Yeah, I mean, this is something, you know, what we as architects have in our hands, you know. So, and from here to ambiguity, you know, it's. I mean, I'm really interested in that, you know, how you I would say like this, porous spaces actually kind of are more or less ambiguous spaces, you know, because, you know, you need to discover them. You need to kind of they trigger your tendency to explore, you know. For example, this space is not porous, you know. Also, that space, you know, the corridor there, it's not porous, you know. It's very, when you see there, when you are there, you can completely understand that, you know. But what is ambiguous in this space? It's actually the scale, you know, because it looks. I mean, when you're outside, it feels like being in a kindergarten, you know. Because I mean, the scale is different. The scale is not the scale of the school, but it's very interesting, because this thing, when you're, you know, that level, it's what, it's like 2 meters 10, 2 meters 5, you know. Huh? The level in the corridor here, you have like 2 meters 5. Like the height of 2 meters 10, you know, and it feels, when you walk along the corridor, it feels that you are in in a very, very low space. And these are the tricks. I mean, these are really the tricks I'm kind of like interested in, you know, and I try to kind of observe that, you know. And for example, like here, this sort of like very strange setting, you know. Because, you know, when I give the lecture, you know, then to Manuel, you know, I really have to think, you know, to turn towards him, you know. But this is something, you know, which sort of provokes, you know. Yeah.
No, it's interesting that you're talking about this idea of looking at the subtleness in the smaller scale, because when you answered earlier about the things you learned in London about being against things, I thought that was very like a strong stand, that maybe there's a subtleness to Plečnik or to the work that has more to do with this ambiguity and this not really being against necessarily, because it's more maybe more charismatic than being against, and definitely more subtle. So I'm interested in this that you're saying now about how this subtleness maybe in the smaller scale sort of handling of a project. I don't know, maybe something else you might want to address regarding the subtleness and the ambiguity that may be present in your education or in your experience, in order to handle the projects with that level of complexity and not necessarily as a stand against whatever.
I would, I mean, thank you for this question. I would say that it depends on how you define the subtleness, you know. I mean, basically, the stadium, it's although it's kind of like a big scale, it's very repetitive, you know. But there is a moment. I mean, the only moment which is really interesting is when you enter it, and you feel that you enter a big space, although that space it looks kind of like an interior space because of the smallness of the stadium. And I think this is something, you know, I'm really interested in, you know, how you do that, you know. And this is just a lot of work, you know, because it's something, you know, which has to do with all the I would say all the tools we have in our hand, you know, not our computers, but we have, you know, like scale, you know, size, dimensions, you know, materiality, you know. It's something, you know, which we deal all the time with. And for example, you know, I also like the way how I presented today. It's also very mixed, you know. I didn't start it like in 2000, I don't know, like with the Chamber of Commerce and then finish with this one. But I really tried to mix it, you know, to also see, also to learn myself, you know, how we, you know, are we changing? Are we still the same, you know? Are we following the same thread, you know? I mean, we can change our formal expression, you know? For example, this building, it's very different than the condominium or the Chamber of Commerce, you know? But the way how you approach it, the way how you move it, you know, the way, you know, how you actually enter the building or in the National Gallery is very similar, you know. Like the way how the kind of like the mass, or, you know, this sort of like the membrane, this interstitial space kind of sort of squeeze or sort of press on you, and then you're inside, it opens up, you know. It's something which is really repetitive in all our projects, you know, but done or materialized in a very different way.
I keep thinking that to me this idea of porosity is, personally I find it a little misleading, in the sense that, I mean, I find it more like a branding means, not like a means of branding the work, let's say, to make it public in the general sense of the public, to make it akin to the idea of, I don't know, bringing the social or into architectural projects, or bringing the public inside the spaces and so on, which is obviously happening, but I find it at an architectural level, I find it more limited as an idea than the comparisons that you made with Plečnik and Ravnikar, particularly with Plečnik, in the sense that, to me, this question of even the notion of ambiguity, I find it a little limited still. Like, I think that there is more than ambiguity in the work. To me, there is, let's say, the mix of, or the misleading. There is something not even counterintuitive. It's like you treat the mass as if it was structure, and the structure as if it was mass, often, and that, to me, is there is something really against the grain of how these things usually are treated. That is that produces the effect of porosity, but there is something internally. There is an internal tension. Let's say there is not just a porous effect. Let's say this building can be said to be porous, but there is something in the very carefully done in terms of treating, for example, the facade as something that is at the same time massive and transparent, or even the corners that you showed, no? Can you put the corners? I mean, I wouldn't say that it's perverse either. It's not just perverse.
Yeah.
It's kind of raw, somehow.
Yeah.
Like, there is a sort of deliberate rawness in the way you relate mass.
Awkward. It's kind of like awkward. Yeah.
Awkward. Yeah. And to me, that those ideas, those I cannot find the word actually to explain it. It's not funny. It's not just funny. It's playful, but it's not just playful. It's awkward probably. But there's something really specific about that kind of counterintuitive treatment of mass and structure, or mass and facade, or that produces a porous effect. But at an architectural level, it's a much thicker concept, I think. It's really hard to grasp, actually.
No, thank you, Ciro, for that. Thank you. I mean, I would say, that this corner and the way how the gutter of the sports hall is done, it's very similar.
Yeah.
It's the way how you bring the water down, or how you kind of put here the lamellas together, or how you don't put the lamellas together. It's in a similar kind of thread of thinking or designing. I would say it's I mean, I never really. Maybe I'm kind of like a little bit like also afraid of thinking about that. To kind of like how to formulate that. Because, for example, like that concrete lake at the fountain.
Yes.
So I mean, this is everyone will try to kind of hide that.
Would try to what?
I mean, normally we would like to hide this. To kind of put it. We will bring like this metal grill, so high, that it will not or change the level of the. But we thought, that this concrete lake actually sort of tells everything how we approach that project. That it's not just. I mean. We know, we show there, that we know how to deal with, like stone which is cut in double curve. How you bring the convex and concave together. How you actually formulate the kind of the curvature so that the water will actually run smoothly. But then we kind of like. Change that. Okay.
Spoiled it.
Yeah, which is just a detour,
Yeah. There is always. I mean, it's like you create the conditions to produce a certain effect, but then you spoil it.
Yeah. And maybe Plechnik was.
Yeah. I mean, in Plechnik, what I associate with Plechnik is that. I mean, when you have these smooth surfaces in Plechnik, it's like they are so smooth sometimes that they seem hollow. It's granite, but it's so smooth that it seems like as if it was cardboard or something. And the same with the opposite, no? Like when you have this stonework that is so textural that it ends up being like scenographic, no? There is, I mean, you mentioned those words actually, the relationship between scenography and monumentality. There is something like, that is like a monumental scenography or a scenographic monumentality. It's like...
But it's, now I go back to this term porosity, it's, I partly agree with you, it's something, you can sort of use it as a PR word, But at the same time, it's, and I think that this is really important, it's porosity means, or at least I think, it's kind of like how you dissolve boundaries. How you, and then, if you relate the porosity to the boundaries, no matter what kind of like boundaries, environmental, atmospheric, structure, social, then it becomes not just a PR word, it becomes kind of like a technique how you sort of can produce today, where it becomes like the way, how, I don't know, like yeah, you make like the completely new theater building, you know, where the foyer will actually runs out and the public space will come in, you know, and it's, so yeah.
The sense in which you use the concept porosity is the same Richard Sennett does. Richard Sennett used it as a place where different people can meet. And they can share life as well. He has done some work in New York in infrastructure.
Yeah.
And then decided to put some commerce buildings to meet different people there.
I mean, I'm kind of like really, you know, this sort of participation and engagement. I have a little bit of a problem with that, you know, because I think that as an architect, you need to kind of provide such a good framework or hardware. Then the software, you know, when people come and start really developing their own software there, you know. Am I clear enough? Like, for example, like in the if you say, okay, I'm gonna be a monitor of in the participatory process, you know, I think this is not enough, you know. I mean, we're all educated to produce, you know, and then the way how you produce it is actually important, you know. And then when you produce it, it's not like the final and frozen product, but it's a product which actually becomes a means for further development. You know?
Perhaps the flexibility or the opportunities to different activities or generation activities as in the National Gallery.
Yeah, for example, you know, the fountain I showed, you know, we never thought that this would be like a kid's playground, you know. And then when they start playing, you know, it's really...
Perhaps that's porosity.
Yeah. I mean, I also thought that kind of like this social porosity, of course, you know, it's like playing with terms, you know. But for me, you know, if you take a bus stop, you know, is bus stop a porous structure? Or it's a porous space? I would say no, but if you take like a bus stop and then people are waiting for a bus and then it rains like today, and then I actually go and use the space of the bus stop not to be wet but also not to catch the bus, you know, then this, I think that it's a porous space, you know.
Why?
The bus stop.
Yes.
Yeah.
But why?
Why?
Why is it suddenly?
Because you know, my intention to be in that space, it's not the use for which this space was actually designed. So it means, you know, I'm going to be in that space, you know, and I don't care, you know, whether the bus will come or not. You know, the only thing what I care is that the rain stop, you know.
I have a question over there. So I was thinking about humor and awkwardness. I was thinking that what's great about the humor and awkwardness you were talking about is that it not only is counterintuitive, but it's also sort of forward intuitive. Forward intuitive. It's not only against the grain, but it also has an intuition about a new form or a new, let's say, status of the thing. So it's not only about the postmodern joke of this is all a construct and it's not true, but also about sort of a proposition level of a new thing.
It's a projective, yeah.
And No, I was wondering. I think that what Peter was saying of structure and mass could be said about this, and I was thinking if I don't know what other new I don't know propositions would you say in those terms of some of the projects? And I mean, I don't think there is not one that encompasses all. I think they're very particular and singular.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned only, like, of course, the most basic, you know. So when you start playing with structure, you know, what else can structure produce than just support the building, or, you know, take the forces. But of course you have, like, you know, it could be reflection, for example. So once we, like, another housing, you know, I didn't show there, you know, it's basically done in a way that people who live in their apartments, they see in the facade of their, I mean, the building is done like that the frames of the reflections are actually the frames they view from their apartment. So basically they identify their apartment in the condominium by the views from their apartment. So these are kind of like, you know, you see the reflection of the church in your apartment, which is exactly the same motif as you see it when you are in your apartment and view it out. But then, you know, the way how it is done, it's of course, you know, how big are the sheet of glass, you know, what is the color of the glass, you know, what is the framing. Or for example, it's I mean, I didn't show you today the building which you use on the poster. It's this air traffic control center at the airport, which is a kind of like a proto-parametric building. I mean, it's the same principle, you know, as here, no? It's the facade. Actually, the bristlets vary according to the program inside and the parameters inside and parameters outside, like the orientation and the use of the space inside. And then you get this sort of interesting sort of wrap around, you know. But basically the idea was, you know, how a air traffic control center, which is a military building, it's like a bunker, you know, like super protected, but at the same time people work there 24 hours by day, you know? And they need like a daylight, they need like a connection towards outside and so on. They sleep there, you know, they eat there, they play there. So it was a kind of a technique. How would you actually explode a bunker in order to bring daylight in? So, and then when we started with that, and then we tried to kind of develop techniques, you know, which would help us to achieve that. So that's why this kind of like testing and exploration and, you know, being curious, you know, it's really important. And I hope that after 25 years we're still curious, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we continue with dinner. Thank you, Boštjan. It was very nice.